welcome back to my channel. I'm James, and today we've got a topic that concerns all of us that collect movies, TV series, that love buying and watching movies and TV series. So this is more than just a review of Juice. So even if you're not interested in Juice the movie, you've seen it, you didn't see it, whatever the case is, you're not really interested in that movie itself. This topic and what we're going to be talking primarily about today comes from the review that I did on Juice and how this affects all reviewers and what's going on in the industry right now. So even if you're not interested in the movie Juice, you're really going to want to make sure you stick around for this, because there's a lot of things that really are upsetting and really did upset me after reviewing this and testing this out, that I realized all of us need to be aware of, and all of you need to be aware of what's going on right now. And this is a very important topic. So not trying to be a bunch of hyperbole here, but this is something, as you'll see when we get later on, that's very upsetting, that I think you're going to realize is a bad thing, very deceptive and misleading going on in the review industry. And this is something that, because of this review, it really came to my attention, and I decided to make this video as soon as possible for all of you. Now, I had intended to do this review originally. It just took me a little bit longer because I got this in and then started working on it, and then this all came to light as I was reviewing it and going through it with my testing, that holy cow, a lot of this came out that really hasn't been talked about. So we're going to get into that, but today we're going to deep dive into, in this review as well, Juice on 4K Ultra HD. And this is the 30th anniversary 4K supposed restoration and remaster on 4K Ultra HD. We're going to be talking about this and going through this just briefly, and then getting to what this brought about, what is actually going on with this release, what's going on with the reviews, and how upsetting some of this really was, and actually some of it's kind of sickening. Not just how the reviews are, but what actually happened with this review and how it affected me health-wise. And I'll kind of explain to you about that as we get along later on. So make sure to stick around, because there's a lot of things about what's going on with some of these releases that I've talked about briefly over the last several years. But this one is by far the worst one that I've encountered yet. Now, talking about just the movie here, Juice, for a minute. Juice came out in 1992. It's rated R for strong language and violence. And it's kind of one of those kind of wannabe gangster movies of teenagers growing up in New York that basically they have some things happen where they do smaller crimes, petty crimes, and then one of them, the actual character of Tupac here, basically decides he wants to escalate things. And it's kind of the story of those you associate yourself with, those you hang around with, those that you put yourself in the company of, can cause you or involve you in situations that can be fatal, cause you to do crimes that drastically change your lives and fatally changes other people's lives, and how crime doesn't pay. And so that aspect of the movie is very well done. It definitely keeps you intrigued, entertained along the way. So the movie itself is one of those movies that it is one of those crime movies that it looks at crime and says, hey, here's what happens when you escalate more and more crime. Here's how things can affect you and really twist your mind and make you out to be a really bad criminal. Now, changing from just the story of the movie. Now, this was supposed to be the ultimate edition. It was supposed to be basically a brand new native 4K 2160p is what this 4K is. It's supposed to have Dolby Vision, HDR10. So they did do those works on it, but there's some things that happened with it along the way that we're going to get to that drastically changed what's actually going on with this release and how it affects all of us that are deciding to buy this. Now, I only bought this movie for all of you to do a review. A lot of you had requested me to do the review here on my YouTube channel. So I went out and got this for all of you, spent my own money on it. And as the thousands of you that have watched my channel for years now know, whether I buy something to do a review or it gets sent to me for a review, I'm always gonna do all my exclusive testing and review to give you the most accurate presentation of what you're gonna see, what you're gonna hear. Regardless of whether it's sent to me or not, you're always gonna get my honest opinion. And that's where that comes into this review so strongly. Now, aspect ratio wise, it is in 1.78 to 1 aspect ratio. On the 4K disc in here, it is a BD66 and it is region free. Now, before we talk about more of the data on the disc and things like that, I want to talk about some of the issues that came up when I was reviewing and testing this, and something that is going on in the industry that's very upsetting, like I referenced back at the beginning of this review. Now, if you decide after going through all of this, you say, hey, regardless of everything you said, I want to pick this copy up, I want to get it anyways. As always, I put that link in the description section right below this video and as a pinned comment. But I ask that you please wait before you click on any of those links. I know that I always appreciate the support when people click on those links. That does help support this channel. But as always, as I've always said on this YouTube channel, I do this to help other collectors like myself, other people that want to buy these, determine if it's worth us spending our hard-earned money on this. And that's where, when I point out my links in my channel, I always ask that you wait until the end of the review when I give my total sum up review score to determine if it's something you should really spend your money on. This one's very important for that reason. So I ask, please hold off on clicking through those links to buy this until you get done with this review so you understand everything that went on with this release. I know I love the support, and that's where I always talk about, if you want to support me and you don't want to support the release, something that always does help is down below there's actually a super thanks button. And if you click on that super thanks button, you can give any tip you want to the channel for these videos and the hard work I put into them. And that just goes right back to the YouTube channel and lets me be able to support to buy these, to get the software to do all of the work that I do on these. So I'd rather you do that. If you're wanting to support this channel, you can always click through that super thanks link. Now, getting into this, there is some massive problems with this release, and I'll start breaking them down for you. I'm going to show you some screenshots above of basically the film grain and what's wrong with how they remastered and released this. Now, there is a massive amount of misinformation, lies, and deceptive practices going on with a lot of reviews nowadays. This is a primary example. I watched this actually yesterday night. I started watching it and I started to get very nauseous. And that's very rare for me. The thousands of you that have watched my channel over the years know that I have a medical condition from a bad car accident that I was in. It's actually a degenerative nerve damage that runs down the left side of my body that causes extreme pain and other things like that. But it's actually degenerative nerve damage that actually goes through one side of my head as well. Well, it's kind of like a smaller case of epilepsy that you can run into that I wasn't aware of would cause certain things. In this 4K Ultra HD, it has some of the worst flickering and horrible artifacting and the worst film grain I have ever seen. And I'm talking about, it is such unstable film grain that it is constantly flickering and strobing and going from light to dark, light to dark. Even in a light scene or a dark scene, it'll just flash and flash and flash throughout the whole movie. I mean, to be honest with you, it has anywhere between 60 to 70% of the whole movie has it continually throughout it. And here's what shocked me. The first like 5 minutes where it's showing the title sequence and it's basically showing the words of who's in the movie and the title intro. Then it gets to where Omar Epps' basically mom comes in, shuts off his record player, and he gets out of bed. And the flickering starts from there, and it's bad. You look up in the corners at his speakers. Then it goes to a scene like right after that showing like the overhead of New York and the buildings. And it's just flicking like, I'm talking like strobing bad. It's one of the worst flickering I've ever seen with film grain and artifacting. Very unstable film throughout the whole thing. And it gets worse than that. There's audio sync lip issues where they're talking and like the mom will talk or anyone will talk, and when you're watching their mouths, it's like a second after, half a second, sometimes up to 2 seconds. Like later you'll start to hear the words come out, or it'll be like a millisecond or 2 seconds later, and it's all over the place throughout the entire film. I'd probably say of the scenes where you can see their mouths talking, there's a good 40% of those scenes where if you watch and pay attention, you'll notice the words come like a millisecond later, sometimes up to a full second later, those words will come out. And it's bad throughout the whole thing. Now, at first I thought maybe it's just the certain player I'm playing it on or the sound system, which I have no problems with normally. So I tried it in all 5 of my different Blu-ray players. I also have 4 different 4K TVs of varying ranges and sizes. Tried it on all of them. Throughout all of them, I had the same thing happen throughout them. Now, the lip sync issues, if I sat far enough away from my smaller 4K TVs, so I have ones that my kids use that are actually in their playroom, and it's a 40-inch 4K TV, and it's about 15 feet away from the couch. If I sat on that one, and far enough away, that one, the lip sync issues aren't as noticeable because you can't see it. I mean, 40 inches from 15 feet away. I mean, you're just not seeing as much. Same thing with the flickering. You could see it, but it wasn't nearly as heavy because it's so far away on a smaller TV. So that's where I want to talk about that for a minute. As a reviewer, I am appalled because I haven't even gotten into all of this on this, but I'm appalled because after I got done watching this and starting to do my review on this, I decided to just take a look at maybe if anyone else had said anything about this to see what was going on, if it was something that any other big reviewers like myself had mentioned this. And guess what? Most of the reviewers didn't even touch on it. They didn't talk about it. They ignored it. There was only one other big reviewer that I found that actually talked about it. They talked about the issues of it flickering, the issues with the sync issues. They talked about the issues with the macro blocking, with the artifacting, and that's just to name a few. But here's the downside. In that review, they talked about all the issues on the disc. Then at the end, they said, I still recommend you picking it up and buying it. Click through my link below. What? Like literally, you know, I've done this for years and I'm not trying to harp too much on this, but this is kind of going to be a rant here because I literally reached that point today after doing this review that I literally just kind of got fed up with it. Because I found out that people are not being honest anymore. And this physically made me sick. So I'm going to go back to my nerve damage here for a minute. If you have any sort of nerve damage or any sort of epilepsy at all, this could cause you to have an epileptic seizure by watching this. And people are not talking about that flickering. If you watch it on, for example, most of my TVs, the two major ones I watch them on are 80-inch high-end 4K TVs. One of them supports HDR10 through HDR10+. The other one supports Dolby Vision and HDR10 and 10+. Now, on those TVs, I always compare them between the two of them to get a range of what the differences are between them. I have Panasonic UB820s on both those TVs. So I play them through the same high-end 4K Blu Ray players on both of those. Now, I also have an LG UBK90 that I have connected to the Dolby Vision one just to test things out on that as well. I tested it through all of them and had the same effects on every one of those 80-inch screen TVs. Now, here's what I'm thinking is happening. A lot of reviewers are getting things in, they're not watching them, they're not testing them, and they're not going through them to see what actually comes out. And here's the bad thing about that. They're saying something looks good, they're giving a recommendation, hey, 4 stars, hey, 3 stars. There's no way on God's green earth here that this is a 4-star out of 5 or 3.5 star out of 5 release on any planet Earth. And I am appalled to say that the reviewers have actually even said that about this. After going through this, it physically made me sick. So what happens is that I got really nauseous. Like if you could imagine being on the ocean, and if you've ever had seasickness from being on a cruise ship that's in bad waves, and no matter what you take, no matter what you do, you're just nauseous the entire time, you can't get it go away. After about that first 5 minutes when it started kicking in, I made it about 30 minutes into the movie. I was so nauseous, I kept having to look away for a while and just listening and then looking back and then looking away. And my wife was like, what is up with that flickering just constantly? I tried it in multiple Blu-ray players. I ended up going through the whole thing and just dealt with the nausea. But if I'm getting nausea from it, somebody that has epilepsy could have an epileptic seizure from it because it is constant, just nonstop going light to dark, light to dark. Now I'm going to show you up above a screenshot here to show you how this flickering kind of looks. You're going to see up here a screenshot of the exact second it flicks, okay, where it shows like that whitish, it's the film grain and basically macro blocking, unstable film grain where it kind of almost whites it out, bad compression. And this is also where it drops the bit rate into the 20s. Now here's what's horrible about this release as well. On those scenes when it flicks as well, it'll go down to the 20s for bitrate, then back up to 50, which is horrible as well. 50 was like about the standard that it would be at the high rate. The compression on it is horrible. Bad compression throughout the whole release. Now, when you see that picture above, you'll see it's kind of like whited out. That's because that's when that film grain like flicks and it becomes really like bright and white, unstable. Then you're gonna see like a millisecond later, I took a screenshot. This is a millisecond, like we're talking same scene. Right when that flickering turns off and it goes back to the film grain, and then a second later it'll flick again back to this scene over here. On this one over here, you see that it's kind of like it's a darker, even the like film grain is darker, then it goes right back to flicking to this. Then there'll be like maybe 5 minutes where it'll look kind of like the normal film grain. The film grain's horrible in it anyways. I mean, they did a horrible job. Very unstable film grain, lots of wavy. The film grain creates waves throughout the image. And the only thing I can figure is a lot of these reviewers that aren't actually reviewing this, or they're watching on very low-end TVs and low-end equipment. And I found that a lot of the time, like, to be honest, if you're reviewing things, and this is my other harp, if you're gonna review things and be a reviewer, whether you're on YouTube or you have a website, you need to have high-end equipment that actually can display the content at the best quality so you can pick up on these things to tell people about them. And maybe that's the case, and maybe it's simply that a lot of these reviewers have low end, and again, I'm not trying to pick on anybody that buys a low end TV at Walmart, but if you don't have Dolby Vision or you're not watching it on like a 70-inch or larger TV that can actually, you can pick up on this stuff, or you're sitting close enough to whatever TV that you can actually pick it up with your vision. If you're too far away watching it on a small TV that you can't see it, I don't know what you're doing reviewing these, because to be honest with you, the reviewers have all said, oh, it looks great, I recommend it, it looks great, the Dolby Vision looks great on it. What are you talking about? Holy cow, this was horrible. This was the worst 4K Ultra HD release I have reviewed yet, and I have reviewed hundreds and hundreds of these over the years, and I have thousands upon thousands of movies I've reviewed and watched. This was horrendous. I wouldn't suggest this to give to somebody for free, let alone if you have a medical condition. Holy cow, they need to put a warning on this, because I was so nauseous because of my medical condition. You have epilepsy, like I said, you could definitely have a seizure from this. That's how bad that flickering was, especially if you're watching it on big TV in a dark room. Holy cow, it would go from dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light, then it would go to a nice scene, and I'll show you that above. There was some decent scenes in it. There was some decent scenes like I'm going to show you above. Then, after those scenes would play, those would maybe go on 4 or 5 minutes, then it would go back to flickering again. And throughout the entire film, I'd probably say 60 to roughly 70% of it had flickering throughout all of it. Film grain structure was horrible through all of it. There was artifacting through all of it, macro blocking through all of it. The bitrate on this was one of the worst bit rates I've ever seen on a 4K Ultra HD release. Now, it does have subtitles in English and French, so I guess you get that. And then the audio is in DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. But again, with that lip sync issues, and it didn't matter what TV I played it on, though I will say the farther away from the TV I was, and when I played it on just the TV instead of with a sound system, for some reason it was slightly less noticeable. And I think that might be because with a TV and a sound system, you send the signal to like a sound system, then that sound system sends the signal to the TV. So maybe what's happening is that millisecond or whatever is adding it to the lip sync issue at that point, whereas opposed to when it's just running straight to the TV, not through a sound system. Like my kid's 4K TV, it goes from the 4K player straight to the TV, there's no sound system there. So it might have just taken that a little bit of that millisecond off of the lip sync issues, so it was less noticeable. Maybe that's the case where some reviewers simply aren't playing it through a sound system. But holy cow, there's so many issues with this release that nobody talked about except for one other reviewer, which again, at the end of it, he said, well, I recommend buying it, which kind of ruined the whole point of why he even talked about the issues, because he went through tons of issues and then he kept making excuses for them. No. For getting a release on 4K Ultra HD, which the whole point is upgrading from Blu-ray, you're better off keeping that Blu-ray. Don't buy this 4K Ultra HD release. And that is why I want to get to my review score here. My review score for this is a 2.1. I literally was going to give it less than that, but I always try to find something that I did like about it. And here's what I liked about it. I liked the shiny slipcover. You see that right there? And I thought the original movie had an interesting story of pointing out how those we associate with and crime only leads to more crime and leads to fatal things that can happen. So I liked that part of the story. But that's it. That 2.1 is the lowest review score and rating I have ever given to a release yet. That is why I said to wait to click through that link to buy it. I do not think you should buy this. I do not think you should support this. I do not think in any shape or form you should watch this. And if you have a TV that you sit far enough away and maybe you bought this already and you thought, hey, it was okay, well, maybe you're watching it on a low enough TV that can't display it the correct way it's supposed to be, so you aren't picking up on those things because you're so far away from your TV. Okay. But anybody that has a high-end TV, which most of us that collect these 4Ks usually try to have the highest end equipment. And like my Panasonic UB820s with my 80-inch 4K TVs, holy cow, it was horrendous. And after doing my last review like on Dune that was absolutely stunning looking, holy cow, this was just trash. And the reviewers out there, which is what I talked about that made me so upset, is the reviewers out there that are saying this is great are straight up lying to you. And that is hard for me to say because, to be honest with you, I've watched reviewers for years. I mean, as you've seen, till I started this YouTube channel years ago, I relied on those reviews, and it wasn't until I started doing these and I came out with this review and started looking at how much lies there is out there that they're barely touching on. Oh, there was this, there was that. Oh yeah, it didn't work really well. But then at the end they say, hey, go ahead and buy this. Don't buy this. This release, which so disappointed me from Paramount Studios, they've been knocking it out of the park. I mean, I've been talking about them for a year now, how great Paramount Studios have been doing, increasing their physical media sales. They did not do a good job with this. Whoever did this and released this, mismastered it, did a horrible job. It is nauseating, the film grain, flickering, macro blocking. Just, I can't even go into it. This was the most unstable film grain and most unstable 4K release I have seen yet. Anybody that reviews this good and says this is a good release is outright lying. There is no way that you can say this is good if you actually watch this on any high-end equipment, high-end TVs, and you actually tested this. The bitrate alone with the compression is horrendous on this release, which leads to why it looks so bad. And if you have a medical condition, I'm gonna say it again in case you didn't watch the beginning of this video. Do not buy this 4K release. There is a high chance, because of the flickering, I got extremely nauseous because of my degenerative nerve disease. And I know I'm harping on this, but it's important because I know there are a lot of people out there that watch these YouTube reviews that do have medical conditions. And that is something that should have been caught. The flickering on this is worse than in some video games that I've seen where the screens flash. And man, it's bad. And maybe make sure you're not sitting too far away from it because there's no way you could miss out on what's wrong with this release. Even though this one cost me my own money and I didn't get this sent to me and I'm very upset with this. I'm never gonna watch this thing again. But my recommendation to you is don't buy this, don't support this, and share this video with everybody you know. Everybody needs to know about what's going on in the industry. And it's very disappointing because it seems like a lot of these reviewers simply don't watch them, they don't test them, or they don't have the equipment to test them, which means they don't have a way to check these, get screenshots on the computers. And just like all those screenshots I showed you above as we've been going along, you've probably noticed the film grain is absolutely horrendous on this release. And I tried to take some of the worst scenes to show you those as we're going along, as well as some of the flickering. I've showed you where it goes from one scene flickering to the next scene a millisecond later to show you what those look like. It is horrible and it is bad. This got a 2.1. Sorry to say it's a horrible release, but as all of you know, I will always be upfront and honest with every single one of you. Now, with that being said, if you still want to support my YouTube channel and help me out, you can always give a super thanks down below. That button right there is just like a tip. That goes straight back into this channel. That's how I go out and buy these and test these for all of you and keep providing you all this content. That's the only way I can keep doing these videos here on my YouTube channel and being honest and upfront with all of you. Because as you all have known, because of how honest I am, a lot of companies just simply won't send me things for review because I test them and I won't just say, hey, it's all amazing and it's wonderful. So you have to keep that in mind. The only way I can keep making these videos is through the support of you, my viewers, and my subscribers. So if you enjoy my honesty, you enjoy these hard work and these reviews I put together, even though this one wasn't a good title to buy, at least now you know not to waste your money. Please go down there and give a super thanks to support my YouTube channel here so I can keep doing these reviews. So the only way I can keep doing this is through your support. Make sure to go down there and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell notification. Give this video a thumbs up and a like for me. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and a like for me. Make sure to let me know what you think about this review in the comment section below. I know I was probably harping on a lot of this, but it really did upset me. And let me know if it upsets you what's going on. I mean, it really does. If you want to go out there for yourself, go out there and see. You'll see that most reviewers gave this a great review score and said, hey, it was great. They ignored a lot of the things that were wrong with it. They actually ignored most of it. And then at the end, they want you to buy it. That's not the case with this. I ask that you don't go down there and click through that link to buy it. I ask that you don't buy it and don't support this release because it was absolutely horrible. But anyhow, that's just me being honest and upfront with all of you, as I always am. Now, I hope all of you have a blessed day, and I have more exciting content, hopefully a better review next time, coming out very soon.